Good morning, everybody. Good morning, it's JPR, and today we're going to talk about the brand spanking new Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield expansion pass, or at least the first half of it, the Isle of Armor. Just going to be going over each individual new addition that the expansion pass has to offer so far and giving my general impressions of it all. First up, how is the actual Isle of Armor geographically speaking? In my opinion, it's pretty good. I think Pokemon still has a long way to go in the open world category. There's still not as much interaction with the world as I would like, so after the first couple trips around it does get a little boring, but by and large I think it's much better designed than the wild area. It's a bit more aesthetically pleasing and the environments are more complex and connected. You have some actual caves and tunnels and rivers and forests and marshlands, lots of stuff that was missing from the wild areas. This is far more interesting because of the varied biomes. Unfortunately, there still aren't any real dungeons to speak of, but that sounds like something they're saving for the Crown Tundra, so I'm not too bummed out about that. It's still not the best open world exploration-wise, nor is it the best looking, far from it actually. But what can you do? You're still shackled to the original game. This couldn't look immensely better than what we already have. But nonetheless, it does feel like a step in the right direction, especially if Pokemon is going to stick with this open world-like setting for the foreseeable future. Now let's discuss some of the new Pokemon additions. We have two brand new legendary Pokemon in the form of Kubfu and Urshifu, and they're alright. I do like the little sightseeing adventure that you go on with Kubfu and later having to choose between the two towers to train it at. I'm really glad that Kubfu had a decision-based evolution and not just version-exclusive ones. I think version-exclusive stuff for the base game is fine, but for the DLC, what if something you want is in the other version but you're stuck with the game you have? That's not too fun because you've already made your decision, and unless you purchased both copies, you're pretty much locked in. That was a minor complaint I heard from some of my friends about Avery and Clara who wanted one over the other but they couldn't because they had the wrong version. I don't think that's as big of a deal, but it's nice that they kept the version exclusive stuff to a minimum with this DLC. Up next we got the Gigantamax forms of the Galar starter evolutions as well as the Kanto starters that aren't Charizard. I don't have too much to say about these because there's not much more to them than what we've already seen. I will say I really like the designs of G-Max, Venusaur, and Blastoise though. I actually think these two look far cooler than their Mega Evolutions, especially Venusaur. I actually ended up choosing Venusaur just because it was nice to see him finally get a cool looking form. I've been having a lot of fun with him. His moveset has been greatly improved this generation. Unfortunately, Slowpoke and Slowbro ended up being the only new Galarian forms in this DLC. I was hoping for a few more, but honestly these are fine. I always thought the Slowpoke family had some fun designs, and this keeps it going pretty well. There's also about 100 returning Pokemon, and they seem to have picked some good ones. Crocodile, Luxray, and Heracross are notably some of my favorites who came back. Other than that, I can't say much. I don't really get too excited for old Pokemon, even in this new post-National Dex culture. It's nice to see them again, but I'm not really stopping to catch them left and right. I will say I like that Chansey is back because I can just grind Chansey raids, and they give you tons of EXP candies, which is really helpful for raising both Kubfu and your Kanto starter. There's also like a dozen or so new moves, and whew, they are spicy. I'm not gonna read them off, but take a look for yourself. These are like meta-changing moves. There is a ground-type Scald now. There are a lot of Pokemon that will benefit from these new moves. Other characters new to the DLC are Avery and Clara, who we talked about before, and the Dojo Master Mustard. I actually really like Mustard. It's cool to see a long-retired champion and how he lives out his days, and he actually has a pretty funny design for his last couple battles that actually reminded me a bit of some Pokemon XD characters. The last fight in particular is also a bit challenging. Granted, I was about 5 to 10 levels beneath him, but it was fun. It's the only 6v6 battle in the game other than Leon, and you can tell this guy is definitely a past champion. Now let's discuss a few of the new mechanics introduced. First up is the Max Soup. I'm so glad they finally added this in. It's an item that allows your Pokemon's Dynamax to turn into a Gigantamax if they're a compatible Pokemon. This is great if you have a Pokemon that you've had a long history with that you really love and you're bringing into the game for the first time and just want them to Gigantamax. Like, say you have a shiny Charizard from an old game and you just really want it to be a shiny G-Max Charizard. You can do that now. I actually just have team members from my first playthrough like Alchemy and Corviknight who I really wanted to Gigantamax, but I was too attached to replace them, so this is a great solution. Pokemon following behind you is a surprising returning feature that I can't help but feel missed the mark by a wide margin. Almost none of the Pokemon follow you at a perfect pace like in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Instead, they're either way too fast like Inteleon and they just run you over every 10 feet, or more commonly, they're just too slow and can't keep up, forcing them to eventually teleport to you if you're running at full speed. This is because the Pokemon's run speed is based on Pokemon Camp. While it's understandable, it definitely doesn't help with the glaring presentation issues that Sword and Shield already have. It's just yet another thing to look at and go, well, that didn't turn out like we expected it to. This kind of just feels like something they added in 5 minutes. On top of the Pokemon speeds being annoying, they just get trapped behind corners really easily and they aren't smart enough to move around, and if you push them in specific ways, they just disappear entirely. Yeah, it just looks and feels incredibly cheap. But wait, it doesn't end there. Just like in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, your Pokemon gain affection for walking around, and at a pretty darn fast pace too. After only about 10 to 15 minutes of walking my Cub Fu, he started dodging moves and squeezing poison out of his veins. I really hate this mechanic, and it's even worse that it's tied into walking Pokemon now. Fortunately, it's the post-game, so this isn't the biggest deal in the world, but it's still an annoyance nonetheless. Just let us turn off this absurdly broken mechanic. It's bad enough that I can't even enjoy Pokemon Camp because of it. Now you're telling me that I can't even walk my Pokemon? Speaking of which, it's hard enough just finding out how to turn off walking Pokemon in general. For a while, I just assumed that there wasn't a way to turn it off, but lo and behold, it's this obscure kid dressed in a Pikachu outfit in the corner of the dojo who does it for you. Who decided this? I hate to say it, but walking Pokemon is a bust for me this time around. They clearly didn't put much effort into it, and it does not give off a good impression. While we're on the negative side, the level scaling report also turned out to be a myth. Maybe it's true if you come here before beating the game, but they said trainers would go up to like level 100 if you had level 100 Pokemon, and that's just blatantly false. I won't hold that against the developers though, it was just bad reporting from whoever said it. It's just a shame because I was probably more excited about the level scaling than anything else in this expansion because of what it meant for the future of open world Pokemon, but it just wasn't there, and that's all there really is to say about that. Again, not really a negative, but it is a disappointment. That's the second time a major news outlet let me down with Sword and Shield. I'm sure most of you remember back in pre-release when they said there'd be 18 gyms in Galar, and that also turned out to not be the case. Disappointing, but really nothing more. And on the technical side of things, they still haven't fixed anything. The internet issue still exists, the Pokemon and NPC pop-in is as glaring as ever. I swear it actually feels worse in some areas, but that might just be me. And for some reason, they still don't have indoor battlefields, they just plop you into another white void and call it a day. So if you were annoyed by all the technical shortcomings in the base game, I'm sorry to say that's all still here. This game is still very unimpressive from a technical aspect. And finally, to end out on a positive note, Zeraora is now available in raids. This is cool because it's one of the few times that they've actually done something with mythical Pokemon in the games in recent years. Now unfortunately you cannot catch Zeraora from these raids, but the Pokemon Presents livestream did confirm that if 1 million trainers defeat Zeraora, we will all get a chance to catch shiny Zeraora at a later time. That means this shiny will be basically worthless when we all get one, but at the very least it's nice to cross a mythical Pokemon off the shiny list since a lot of the new ones just straight up never get their shiny forms released. Victini is a mythical Pokemon who came out nearly 10 years ago, and to this very day, it is still impossible to obtain a shiny Victini without cheating. And sadly, that is the same case for almost every mythical Pokemon after Victini as well. It's very nice that Zeraora, a Pokemon that was incredibly glossed over in Gen 7, gets to bear this distinct honor of being shiny, if we manage to hit the 1 million mark. I know Pokemon Sword and Shield has sold over 17 million copies, but bear in mind a lot of people probably don't have any interest in playing anymore, and I haven't even found a Zeraora raid yet. I've been looking everywhere too, which tells me that the spawn rate isn't incredibly high right now, so we'll just have to see. Overall, for a $15 value, because remember this is only half the expansion pass, I would say this is an alright amount of content, though there is still the argument that this content should have been in the game to begin with, considering Sword and Shield was incredibly light on post-game content. It's a fair argument, but at the same time, it's 2020. You'd be hard-pressed to find a game that doesn't have pre-planned DLC. Regardless, it's an okay DLC pass. It didn't wow me, I wasn't blown away by anything, I don't think it's a must-buy expansion yet, but if Sword and Shield are like the only Switch games that you play, then you might as well buy it. It's still a decent amount of content that beats running around the wild area for the rest of eternity. I'm still personally hoping that they'll drop a New Game Plus on us at some point, maybe when the Crown Tundra releases. I'm not holding my breath, but I do still want to see some sort of improvement made to the base game. That, and the Ash Ketchum hat that Japanese players would be able to get for having Zarude. I am a simp for that hat. You give me the hat and New Game Plus, I'll be a happy camper. I won't even complain about the non-functional walking Pokemon. Okay, maybe I will, but I'll still be way happier than I am now. That's it for today's video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.